And Josef Gregory Mahoney joins us now to continue the conversation. He's a professor of politics and international relations at East China Normal University in Shanghai. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. Having struggled to initially reduce its trade reliance on China, New Zealand is now trying to bolster it and expand exports beyond traditional items like dairy, meat, and wood. Why is now the right time for that, and what are the sectors Prime Minister Hipkins is hoping to promote?
Well, this New Zealand trip strikes me as similar to the one we saw with French President Macron's recent visit to China. He also came with a sizable trade delegation, also traveled to multiple Chinese cities, and also communicated messages that were strikingly different from what we hear from other Western countries like the U.S. And he did this despite other Western leaders keeping some distance from Beijing. Now, I think Hipkins and Macron both understand the value of an independent foreign policy and the need to balance competing interests and the need to expand, not curtail trade with China. I think both sides realize that there are more headwinds coming vis-a-vis the global economy and concerns about recessionary pressures, particularly as economies still try to recover from COVID. But they're also concerned about the growing frictions between China and the United States. So they're motivated to improve relations and trade while they still can, and likewise to do so as some others are considering cutting ties with China, in so much as this may mean more possible opportunities for their own economies. Now, I think they also realize that there's a difference between what the U.S. says and does. For example, we know last year that U.S. bilateral trade with China increased to record levels. So I think there's this question in Wellington and Paris and other places, why follow a path the U.S. promotes but doesn't follow itself? But I think there's also another key point, is that New Zealand discovered that there was no economically viable replacement for its trade relationship with China. And likewise, contrary to U.S. fear-mongering, no need to worry about the imaginary China threat. Further, as your lead-in noted, with emerging industries like gaming, with New Zealand's desire to diversify away from agricultural products, they realize that the Chinese market, with 700 million gamers, but also 800 million middle-income earners, one of the leading destinations for gaming products, that this is a market that cannot be ignored and that must be embraced if they want to move forward.
Now, the two nations first entered into a free trade agreement back in 2008. Obviously, that relationship has ebbed and flowed over the last 15 years. Just how crucial is China as an export destination for Wellington?
Well, New Zealand's exports to China are worth more than 12.8 billion, or roughly a quarter of the country's total export earnings. It is the China trade relationship is New Zealand's largest. But before we've had ebbs and flows because of geopolitics, but we also, of course, had the ebb and flow associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, as your lead-in noted, prior to COVID-19, New Zealand was China was New Zealand's second largest source of tourism visitors, behind Australia. But last year, this failed to seventh. And I think it's very clear if you know Chinese people, if you spent some time in China, a lot of Chinese have a very romantic notion of New Zealand. A lot of them would like to visit there, would like to continue to visit there, and it's very clear that Hipkins would like to encourage that kind of relationship, in addition to restarting the positive relations related to education sectors, as well as emerging sectors like gaming.
Now, on the flip side, consumer spending is slowing in China, with Dragon Boat holiday spending still below 2019 pre-pandemic levels. So how does an expanded trade and tourism relationship with New Zealand benefit China?
Well, New Zealand is a strategically important country. It's often a force of, or a voice of reason and restraint amongst allies like Australia and the U.S., who take more aggressive positions towards Beijing. This is why New Zealand's Western critics sometimes deride Wellington as the so-called soft underbelly of the Five Eyes. Of course, this is unnecessarily pejorative. China appreciates New Zealand's diplomacy intact. Additionally, New Zealand has good products. It's a great place to visit. And having access to New Zealand products and being able to tour New Zealand, being able to attend New Zealand schools, this is something that many Chinese consumers appreciate.
It should be an interesting visit. All right, we will have to leave it there. Thank you, Josef Gregory Mahoney, for your time.